Tom's got the Ancient Aliens opening sequence background. Zeus has got the Stargate. Pretty nice, man.
And Jack looks like he's on the X-Files.
Yep.
Hey Jack, do you like my my headgear?
Yeah, what do you got? Oh, nice. It's a good look.
It's all good, man.
It's another great version of
great look.
When things get crazy.
Oh, great.
Here we go.
When things get crazy, I'm just going to throw it on.
So Zeus, you get it started,
Okay.
and then
So
toss it over to me, man.
So Mike doesn't know how to do anything on Skype.
Yes, I'm better with Skype, not Zoom.
He's obviously not the beneficiary of any of this ancient alien technology.
Yes.
Yeah,
Just keep doing this. Just keep doing this like every 5 minutes.
Every fuck. All right, good.
All right, Zeus, you start. I don't know all the Spotify stuff, so you start it. Let's go.
All right.
Let's rock and roll.
Welcome back to a lot of new viewers, it looks like, this week, to the Friends of Zeus podcast. We are now at episode, help me out, guys, 51? 52.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a whole year's worth of episodes.
We're getting there.
We are now, you can find us on Facebook at the Friends of Zeus podcast. You can find us on Spotify. I'm building it up. We've actually got our most recent episodes. We're also on something called Anchor. You can look there as well. We're on the YouTube channel Giants Jack. And yeah, we're also we're gonna be trying to get more guests this year. This year, that's our goal, is to get more cross promotion. Our last 2 episodes really good. Really like both guys. We're gonna try and continue that trend of having new people that have something different to tell us, just to get new perspectives. That's what we want from the show. We want it to be a soapbox. So if you're listening and you want to talk about something, come on. We'll have a fun time, even if we don't delve into it. But that's pretty much it. Tonight's show is Mike's. He's going to be talking about ancient aliens. And when things get a little crazy, I brought my ancient aliens headwear.
Nice.
So,
Okay, Mike.
I love it. You look like a Hershey's
Kiss.
Kiss.
Now because I'm in public and it'll look ridiculous, but I will put it on every once in a while and make it silly.
I love it.
See, he looks like a Hershey's Piss.
Hey,
Hershey's Kiss.
Right.
That's
All
what
right.
they used to call me in high school.
All right, we're gonna get this party started. So, couple things. I don't want to do too many disclaimers because it just kind of is what it is. But my mindset about this is just kind of like as a introductory sort of thing, just sort of like a a thought process, just thinking about things maybe you haven't thought about before. I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything. There's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of contradictory information. I was kind of laughing when I was just looking up some numbers and things for this episode. Like almost everything I looked at was like, this is completely debunked. This is pseudoscience. This is like garbage and all that stuff. So, but if you're someone like me, you kind of like to look things up yourself and, look how far we've come trusting what the conventional wisdom is on things. So I'll just leave it open to everyone's own interpretation. So this is something that I talked about doing, and we've talked about doing an episode or two on ancient aliens. And I want to break it into two parts. So the first part is going to be about Paleo contact theory, ancient astronaut theory. And then the second part, which we'll do another time, either next week or later, will be on like, alien sightings in modern times, dealing with all the myriad of races of aliens that we have running around and things like that. But for this episode, I just kind of wanted to give some context to these two theories and some other theories related to whether or not extraterrestrials have had any influence on the human species or other species on Earth in our ancient past. The two, they're really kind of the same thing, but like I said, if you Google paleo contact theory, or ancient astronaut theory. There's plenty out there. These are not new. I know that the TV show on a History Channel. Yeah.
Would you go as far as to say the truth is out there?
The truth. Well, maybe.
I just
don't
came
know.
up with that.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of this that's intertwined with pseudoscience. There's a lot of this intertwined with archaeology, study of ancient texts, geology, all kinds of stuff, intersects in this discussion. Again, the show kind of, when did it start, like 2010 or something? So that, that kind of brought it more into popular culture, and Giorgio with his crazy hair and stuff like that, definitely got, that's kind of where I started getting into it, was watching that show.
And then you got your Jacques Vallée, but he's more modern, right?
I'm not sure who he is.
Jacques Vallée?
Yeah,
he's huge. He's a lot of Area 51 stuff, I think.
But I guess what I'm trying to say is there's plenty out there. It's such a big topic. It's hard to kind of capture it in 1 hour, So both of these, or this whole idea, it's been around for a long time, but really it got started in earnest in the 60s, specifically like 1968. Erich von Daniken, he plagiarized a lot of stuff from other people that have been writing about this, but he released a book called Chariots of the Gods with a question mark. And it's got a question mark because, like, one thing, like the show Ancient Aliens, it's a lot of questions. Like, if you watch, it's like Jeopardy or something. Like, they rarely make a statement. Everything is like a question, right? So the whole book is kind of like that. He's sort of like, what about this? What about this? And his background, he was basically in religious school, and I believe in Austria, and he was basically I don't think he was in a seminary, but he was doing a lot of theological studies. I think that was like his forte. And he started noticing that even in the Bible, there's a lot of references to things that seem fantastic, right? Like things coming out of the sky, Ezekiel's wheel, things along those lines. And he started thinking like, hey, what if this isn't a made up story? What if people are trying to be literal? Like, what if some of these ancient texts were our forefathers were actually trying to explain something to us, and they didn't have the words, they didn't have modern technology, they didn't know what they were seeing, but they were trying to like accurately describe it, which makes a lot of sense when you look at these archaeological sites and these stones and these carvings that, some of them took years and years and years to do. And, were people doing that just as a joke? Were they doing it were they carving these symbols because they thought it was folly, or were they really trying to get a point across? So that's his background. And then in the late 70s, another guy who I don't know as much about, my wife does, but so I learned a lot about him through her, but Zacharias Sitchin, who had a theory that there was he wrote a book called The 12th Planet in 1976, I think it was, which basically theorized that there was a planet that was in an orbit around the sun in our solar system that would come by like once every 3,600 years. And
my very educated mother just served.
There's a couple planets missing in there. I don't know about those, but basically he would translate.
Look, that's 12.
He would translate the ancient Sumerian texts, and he was trying to put 2 and 2 together and try to prove that there was this race of people called the Anunnaki that would visit us every 3,600 years. And so anyway, that's kind of like those are the two kind of like founding fathers of this, whole idea, at least in modern times. The thing that's really interesting is we are, all in all seriousness, we're living in kind of like a new golden age of archaeology right now with satellite imagery, ground penetrating radar, Google Earth, where people can sit in their chairs and look all over the planet. And there have been more pyramids discovered on the Earth, like in the last 10 years than thousands and thousands of them.
May I interject for a second?
Yeah.
Does anybody remember, it was probably a few years back, but they they found this one, I want to say it was Mayan. I could be wrong, but it was probably the first. Hello, Hervé. They were looking at from Google Earth, and you could just, it was over this jungle, and you could literally see like it had to be miles, whatever it was, but it looked like a city or a pyramid, the base of a pyramid, not your classic pyramid, like the geometric shape, but more Mayan oriented. Does anybody remember seeing that where it showed the border in the jungle? It was probably 4 or 5 years ago.
I think one in Mexico and probably one over in the Far East as well. They've been finding stuff like that around the globe.
And there's been, and even before that, but they're finding even more now, there are certain carvings, certain forms of architecture, there's certain techniques that are found on multiple continents that date back to times before we have any understanding that people were seafaring. So the question is, how did this technology spread, through the land bridge, or were there extraterrestrials that were like, the common denominator? So, and again, that kind of feeds into that whole thought process too. It's like maybe everyone was kind of reading from the same sheet music, as it were.
You sent us these links, and I didn't get to look at everything, but the one that I did see was the one where they had the H.
Oh yeah, Pumapunku.
Punta something or other, right? Yeah, and I found that really fascinating because it's a concept that we still talk about to this day of the Nephilim, which are like these hybrid humans, like bigger than us. Like I found it fascinating because I'm not against the idea of aliens. We've had these discussions before. I hope you're going to talk about the Golden Dictator or whatever he's called.
He's on the first slide,
ambassador.
Man. I'm not gonna. He's casual, like slightly. Yeah, he's on the first slide.
But I see. I lean. And I was talking to Tom about this the other day. I do believe, yes, it could be aliens. I'm more theoretical about it in that, why isn't it not us coming back? Because it would make sense that, we were shorter, we've grown over the millennia, in the 1800s, you'd be hard pressed to find a lot of 6-foot guys. They were considered like monsters, not literally, but I mean, they were huge. They were the lawmen and the politicians. They were these ubermensch, you know what I mean? And so I like to think that we traveled back, and that
that's part of this too. I mean, personally, I love thinking about that stuff, like transdimensionalism, and like, is it just us from the future, or did we visit ourselves in the past? And
maybe it's all of it. Maybe it's multi-dimensional, phasic kind of thing. Somebody slips through. Anything's possible. That's the beautiful thing about this. And I was telling Tom earlier, I'm not skeptical. I'm I don't think anybody from another planet is trying to deal with us right now because we're monkeys with guns. But I don't know. I'm just, I need to see something. I need to see something concrete. Can't be argued. Pyramid floating in the sky.
Let me share the screen. I'll share the screen here. All right.
Cool.
All right. Can you guys see all that pretty good?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, and to Zeus's point, yeah, the thing is, again, I'm just speaking personally, but a lot of people that think about this stuff, people aren't really saying like, okay, that, aliens or extraterrestrials visited us in the past, or Earth in the past, and did all this stuff. It's that they imparted knowledge or technology or something along those lines to us and allowed us to do this sort of stuff. There's people out there that have theories that extraterrestrials, or Sitchin's point is that the Anunnaki would come here and basically messed with our genes to make us into a workforce for mining and things along those lines. Again, that's a whole other thing. So here's Zeus's guy.
So like where they're just waiting because they want us to gather resources and
Mhm.
and mine the planet, and then they're just going to come up and scoop it all up when we're done,
Pretty much, yeah. Pretty
like
much.
a resource McDonald's.
Yeah, so if you look in nature, and again, this gets into all kinds of different areas, but in nature, when species meet, it's usually not mutually beneficial, right? Typically in the wild, when you have a certain creature and encounter another creature, someone's getting eaten or used or something along those lines. So the idea that, it's some species that is benevolent and trying to help us, it could be, maybe, but that kind of flies in the face of pretty much all of history as we know it.
The picture, sorry, Mike, I was just
Yeah.
going to say, so the picture on the bottom left, the two characters are riding in the stars, if it were, or comets perhaps. The one on the left, it looks like one of those acrobats. I mean, if you look at the figure,
Mhm.
you know how the acrobats would like fold their legs up behind their head?
Yeah,
Is that what he's doing there?
it looks like it. I mean, this is
He's kind
those
of
are,
riding behind Jesus with his
yeah, I mean,
legs
those
up
are,
behind his head.
those are close-ups of the detail. If you look at the painting at the top, it's the top left and top right corner. And again, there's a lot of paintings and artwork where these things kind of appear, wars, things shooting each other, in the sky. The Yellow Emperor here at the bottom, who's kind of the mythical founder of China, and although in Xi's China, you're not allowed to worship him or anything. He still has a holiday in Taiwan. They still revere him, and he was said to arrive on a dragon from the sky, and pretty much, I mean, you're talking like the advent of gunpowder, all kinds of different technologies, and he
Right.
apparently ruled for a few hundred years and then got back into his dragon and took off into the sky. So it's sort of like,
Wow.
okay, so are they just, was it
Yeah,
are they
they
trying to
said
say
they
it's a
had-
dragon, or was this a
they s-
spaceship?
They said he had a flying machine, right?
Yeah. Oh, they actually said it was a flying machine. He would,
Like
that's how he would get
they
around.
call them Viamas or something. Viamas.
In India. Yeah, I believe that's what they call them in India.
So can I point out something interesting about this?
Mhm.
So the one picture over here with the one guy following the other guy. So Einstein had a theory, right? That if you were to go fast enough to travel through time, if you were to look behind you, you would see you traveling behind you. And that picture, the bottom one on the left, kind of, I get that vibe from it, that maybe he's just looking back at him.
Yeah.
At himself.
And then you end up, you look back and you see yourself, but with your legs up behind.
behind your head. Well, that's the whole, I mean, again,
It's a weird side effect of time travel.
I mean, transdimensionalism is basically the theory that everything that has ever occurred is all occurring right now at the same time. That
Are you
there's,
talking like string theory, or?
I don't know. I don't know how it relates necessarily to string theory. It's just that, that there are there's like infinite realities all occurring simultaneously at the same time. But which, again, if you look at time travel, we have a hard time, no pun intended, we have a hard time conceptualizing time outside of its linear construct that we know, right? I mean, it's like when people, didn't understand 3 dimensions, it's like another dimension. But anyway, I'm kind of getting sideways on this a little bit, but
Okay.
yeah, no, it's cool. So first, as just a primer, and I found this interesting, and I'm still looking for a good graphic for this, and I've been looking for this for a while. At the Museum of Natural History in DC, they've got a timeline of Earth history that is like, it's got to be 150 feet long or something like that. It's enormous, and it's fascinating because it's hard for us to conceptualize and visualize how much time the Earth has been around.
Right.
So if you look at this graph, you
Gotta
know,
be 10, 20 years
10, 20 years at least.
at the minimum.
You know,
I'm not a scientist though, so.
Well, we're in the Cenozoic. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right. Also, I may pronounce stuff wrong. I may have numbers wrong, whatever. You can call my boss.
I mean, it's
But
facts.
facts.
That's all right.
Facts, yeah. Even within
Facts hold us
things that are written, there are disparities and things that are contradictory. Anyway, so we're in the Cenozoic era, basically everything after, you know, the end of the dinosaurs, you know, when the last asteroid, the second asteroid or meteor or whatever hit our planet. And I mean, you can look at this graph here or pause it when you're looking at it again, but, you know, you can see when humans appear. I mean, humans, we've only been around, what, like 200,000 years or something like that, our earliest ancestors.
Is this all stuff that the author was telling his mother? Because it's like, Ma, formation of the moon.
Wait, with
Ma,
what?
earliest start of photosynthesis.
Well, this is
Ma, the Cambrian Explosion. Ma, come see.
it was very serious. Well, this is, I
Okay.
mean, this is all accepted, you know, by archaeologists and things like that. This isn't part of the ancient astronaut theory or anything. It's just this time frame. I just found it interesting to give kind of some perspective. I mean, basically the Earth, anyone know? Well, it's already on here. I should have asked before I put it up. But they speculate the Earth is about 4.6 billion years old. And
Okay.
really, for the first 4 billion years, not much was happening. I mean, as far as like, you know, other life forms, you know, complex life forms and things like that being on the planet. So the reason I kind of bring this up and just to give some perspective is, can you guys see my cursor?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're in this little area here. I mean, this is going back to this is like us, we're here at the black line. And if you go here, that's that's when the dinosaurs ended. So you have all this other time. And if you look at, this is a shot from 1996 from the Hubble Space Telescope.
Wait, stay on
And-
this for a second, because I
Yeah.
want to just point out something I find interesting. And this even leans
You mean
into
back?
like,
Back or this one?
stay on the graph.
Okay.
So what I find fascinating is they say like 1950, right around then, that technology took this huge leap. And this is also around the time of Area 51, like the big one that they couldn't hide, and it got in the papers and they took it out of the papers, blah, blah, blah. And I find it fascinating looking at the graph that and this is where I can get my sci-fi head on, and I like to play with this. And I just noticed that the evolutionary differences they explode at times.
Mhm.
And they become, if you look at this in a backwards sense, in other words, those shorter lines are actually bigger lines. You follow what I'm saying? Like, that's where things got shorter and evolved quicker. It's kind of a fascinating look. Like maybe somebody did come, throw some shit into the DNA, and then bail.
Yeah.
I'll bet you, in fact, I'll bet if you looked at this, you could probably find, and this could just be people trying to deal with it to conceptualize the evolutionary part of it, that I'll bet you if you looked at the beginning of these times on at least some of them, we would probably see that that's where people
Something,
felt aliens visited us.
something,
Does that
yeah.
make sense?
Yeah, I mean, the Cambrian explosion is basically, if you trace back almost all forms of life that we know of, they all kind of have they all go back here and then they kind of stop. You know, pretty much all life that's on the planet right now has its origins, can trace its origins back to this time, but not much before that. So there is definitely something that happened, either just by accident, by nature, or whatever. I mean, there's also the whole theory of you know, that life, and again, it's pretty easy to believe that, you know, life on our planet came here on an asteroid or small meteors or whatever.
Or in a spaceship.
Well, I'm just saying, even if it wasn't from intelligent life, you know, on the outside windows of the
Right.
space station, they found life. I mean, life,
It
we
could
know
just
now
be
life.
happenstance.
panspermia, I think is what they call it. You know, basically where
You said
organisms.
sperm.
I knew that was going to get it something from Zeus. But you know that like organisms hitched a ride here on an asteroid or a meteor or something along those lines. I mean, we already know this happens. I mean, there's people that believe and there's theories that human life on our planet, that we originated on Mars, you know, that Mars used to be able to sustain life, and that there was some event that they knew was going to happen or whatever, and you know, where they had populated the Earth somehow ahead of that.
I
And
love that stuff.
that were originally from Mars, things along those lines. But anyway, yeah, so the Cambrian explosion, definitely something happened there. We don't really know fully exactly what it was. But anyway, I just wanted to give some context of like, you know, everything that we know going back to the dinosaurs is just in this little tiny area here, which is fascinating. Let's see.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Jack, what are you eating?
Let's move on.
Jackie, did you bring enough for everybody, for God's sakes?
Do you have gum for everybody in class?
Yes. And put it on your nose.
What is that? Peanuts?
Yeah, nuts.
All right, man. I've got some peanuts.
There
It's
you
funny.
go.
Stop eating your nuts, guys.
So
Gum and nuts. It's a winning combination.
So again, this is just provided for context. So this is a shot from the Hubble Space Telescope, which, by the way, on another note, just yesterday, the Webb Telescope reached its final destination about 1 million miles away.
If
From
that's
us.
all real, if that's all real and not made up and fake.
I guess, yeah.
You know.
How about, so anyway, pretty much each point of light in this photograph, this was an early picture from Hubble. I'm sorry, probably mid lifespan of Hubble, where they pointed it at the darkest area they could find in the sky just to see. Basically, they were seeing like, how far can this thing see? So
This is what they saw.
this is what they saw. This is a composite photo from Hubble, and they've done certain calculations, and basically every point of light in here they believe is a galaxy. So each point of light likely has hundreds of billions of stars in it.
Right.
And of course,
Or even each
Or as
point
Carl-
is also
as
a
Carl
cluster
Sagan
of
has-
galaxies.
As
Cluster.
100 billion trillion stars and 100 billion trillion galaxies.
I'm just saying from a
As Carl Sagan
standpoint,
would have said, star stuff.
yeah, Sagan was not a big proponent of the paleo contact or ancient astronaut theory. He was
Just
very much
quick
against it.
tangent. Contact is such a great book by him. Freaking loved it. I love that. I mean, that dude was cool. I liked Sagan. Sagan was kind of bad.
Yeah, he was amazing.
And
It
that,
was
that would
amazing.
make sense.
Sagan backwards is Nagas, right?
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah, let's finish.
Mike wins biggest tangent of the show.
Tangent alert. Tangent.
But that would make sense from his perspective, Sagan, because all of these galaxies, everything that you see in this picture, it's all moving away from us.
Here,
So
and,
think of
and
like
here's
trying
my
to
thing.
travel back to Earth or
From
to
here.
Earth for the first time. Yeah. And everything's
Couple
spreading out. It's
observations.
just so impossible.
Couple observations. First of all, the one thing we do have to keep in mind is that if we're seeing those now, that's like 30,000 years ago
More than
for the
that.
light to travel
Yeah.
to us. But the thing I'd like to mention, believe it, don't believe it, what I want is I want interstellar communication. I want there to be thousands of populated planets and us to be able to.
There
I don't know
are,
about
I'm
you
sure.
guys.
I mean, I think
Um,
it's logic will tell you that there's life out there. There's
There has
tons
to
of
be.
planets, but the question is, can the life get from planet to planet to communicate with each other?
Yeah,
Well,
no,
and
that's
again, we're
yeah.
looking at something that could have been 26,000 years ago, and they're heading our way, and that's cool. That's
No, but
super
they're
cool.
heading away from us.
yeah. These are all everything in the universe is getting further apart
Yeah, it's
constantly,
expanding
all the time.
and- yeah.
I mean,
I would love to have aliens, man. I really would. But if I may, and this is something we may have talked about on the show, but the thing for me that is most compelling and also upsetting at the same time is not every, I think we've all established that we're pretty pragmatic and we have the ability to be a little more complex than other people out there. Not saying everybody, but the thing about it for me is I almost get why there would be cover-ups if we did have aliens here and the government knew it, because let me explain it in this way. So Ibn Rushdi or Al-Farabi, and then Saint Augustine, they're these guys that like took religion and inserted philosophy into it, right? Because religion for the most part was only for the rich, the educated, the people that could contemplate these things. And I feel like alien visits would also fall into something where we need to be, you got to ease it in. You know what I mean? Not to get all pervy with it, but I mean, they got to ease it in on us, because I think if aliens showed up, like very much like the day the earth stood still and just showed up on the White House lawn, people would be fucking killing themselves. It would be like a suicide, the biggest suicide of society ever, because people would just couldn't contemplate. Like there has to be an education towards this. There has to be
that sounds more like something for next week. I could be totally wrong, Mike. But
yeah, present day stuff is more for the next episode. But I do get your point.
I don't know that it does, because I think even back in 800 years ago, there was always going to be that person that was a little more cerebral than everybody else and was probably a leader. And probably if something like that happened, there was a discussion and it was like, this will break people's brains. That's the thing, man. Look at us. We're talking about COVID again, but look at us with COVID. Look what it's done to the societal mental health.
Civil society. Yeah.
Imagine something comes and lands on the White House lawn, or okay, so we won't call it the White House lawn. We'll call it in the front of a Mayan temple that just can't be explained. They look a little different. They got this technology. It could just be cell phone, something like a cell phone, but that's magic. Technology is magic if you go far back enough. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
You know what's funny is in the 30s, 40s, and 50s and 60s. Well, I'd say the 30s, 40s, 50s. Yeah. Movies about aliens were always, they were coming here to attack us, and they were always portrayed as monsters. And then, like in the 60s, they had TV shows like My Favorite Martian and with E.T. and Star Wars and Star Trek. It's almost like they're portrayed as heroes, and
or sometimes goofy nutballs.
Yeah, right. But it's almost like
I mean,
conditioning the public to accept them.
And you know what? If we want to pull on some Yuri Bezmenov stuff, that's like some Bezmenov like level stuff. Like ease in the aliens so that when they come, we can be more accepting of it. But my point being is, I really feel like mentally on a societal level, aliens at any time is like a devastating thing on the psyche. However, to your point, Jack, back then, and when you had small societies, like it wasn't a world society, it wasn't a global thing. This is maybe why we have pyramids everywhere. If we're leaning into this and we're like, yes, this is real, maybe that's why we have pyramids, because they went and visited different places that couldn't contact each other and tested different things. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of religions that have similar stories, that originate all over the world. But I mean, the main reason I wanted to show this slide and the previous one with the time is, human beings, our culture, it's like hardwired into us. It's kind of like an anti-hubris thing I want to put out there. Like we have like modern technology and stuff has been around like not even a blip. I mean, the universe that we live in is so huge, and the amount of time, that chart that's just the Earth. I mean, our solar system isn't even like an old solar system, and it's hard to even get a picture of what that amount of time is. So what I'm saying is our what we know is so nothing. I mean, there's so much more that we don't know. And, getting in on this next slide here, this is a place in Turkey called Gobekli Tepe. And it was discovered.
You call it Turkey.
Well, it's in Turkey. I think Western Turkey, but it was discovered in 1963. One of these like one of these sort of T monolith things, just the very tip of it was sticking up out of the ground. Anyway, they didn't really start excavating this thing until 1995, and they have found, you can't radiocarbon date stone. It has to be something that's organic. And they found some things here, and that they've dated it back. Now, this is not ancient alien stuff. This isn't Giorgio saying this. This is like, accredited archaeologists, date this site back to 9,500 to 8,000 BC, or I should say 8,000 to 9,500 BC, which is 11,000 to 10,000 years old.
It almost looks like concrete or castcrete or something, like it was poured,
Yeah, I don't know. These blocks, they're two large ones in the center, surrounded by other ones, and there's dozens of these things. This was in a hill, and it was filled in at some point. Using ground penetrating radar, they have an idea of how big this complex is. They've been excavating since 95. They've only uncovered about 5% of it so far. So this is something that will be going on long past, our time is gone. But the reason I bring up the age is when we were in high school, the five of us here, the common knowledge, what was taught is that human organized civilization only dated back about 6,000 years, And now they have evidence that this is from 11 to 10,000, 10 to 11,000 years ago. So the point is, when people say like the science is always changing, and again, it does kind of dovetail a little bit into COVID. I'm not just trying to be a contrarian, but nor do I think it's safe to just, blindly accept things. There's a lot of things that are true and then later turned out not to be true. So,
but what's the connection? I don't mean to jump ahead if you're about to get to it, but what's the connection between this site and aliens?
Yeah, and I won't get into so much with Gobekli Tepe because again, there's a lot that's still not known about it. I'm going to be talking about some other monolithic sites, and I just wanted to bring up Gobekli Tepe because it is, as of right now, it is the oldest archaeological site ever found on the planet. So it's pretty significant. I mean, as far as like having human habitation in it, by leaps and bounds. I mean, it's considered the oldest site that we found so far.
Mike, I got a question then.
Yeah.
Because I know you had said they've found nothing but stone so far, nothing that they can carbon date at this particular site.
No, they have been able to. Yeah.
Okay. Because I know they were able to do that at Pumapunku, right? They found the grassy bundles and and that was also roughly about 10,000 years ago, they think.
Yep.
So this shit was going on all over the place.
And the thing, and we'll get into this in a minute, but and this is another picture of Gobekli Tepe. The thing that's kind of fraught with the radiocarbon dating is, like with the grass baskets, they'll find these and say, okay, this is down by the foundation, this was here when it was built, we can radiocarbon date it, so we date it to this age. But there are, and what I'm going to get into in these next few slides is, there are a lot of monolithic sites that are much older than what we know. They're built on older monolithic sites.
That grass could have been put there like 5,000 years afterwards. It was built.
Exactly. This is a detail of one of the towers. There's like carvings of all sorts of animals
Looks like a
on these
bowl.
stones, and they're all unique. That's the other thing. Like these towers and these carvings, they're not finding any duplicates. Again, they've only uncovered 5% of them, but there's a lot of. So, and some of the animals that they're showing, like there's some evidence that, they were involved with agriculture and animal husbandry and all kinds of stuff that just, we never thought. I mean, again, when you and I, the five of us were in high school, we were told humans weren't doing this at that time. And just in our lifetimes, they've discovered this. This is going over to Tiwanaku and Pumapunku. So this is from Pumapunku. This is in Bolivia. There's this site outside Tiwanaku, which I won't get into Tiwanaku right now just because of time. But
that looks like form poured concrete, like somebody made a mold and just poured concrete, and
It does.
maybe they had that ability.
This dates to about 3,500 years ago. There's other scientists, and again, these aren't ancient astronaut theorists. This is like other scientists that think it's 11 to 17,000 years old. The interesting thing about Pumapunku is the locals who.
This is one I was talking about earlier with the
Nephilim. Yes,
that's so cool.
It's Incan as far as they know. It may predate that, but the locals believe the site. Their belief is this is where the world was created. Like that's what it's pretty significant way of putting it. The interesting thing about Pumapunku is the way these blocks look mass produced. I mean, there's many of them. These H blocks. They don't really know exactly what they were for. If you, and I'll just use this H as an example. I don't have a head-on shot of it. The thing that's interesting about these is the distance from this point to this point at the top of the opening is narrower than it is in the bottom. So these are keystones, basically. There's people that think that was done so that they could interlock together. These have been kind of damaged, but if you get an up-close detail in these things, the lines on them are sharp, like super sharp, And again, this is going back to a time where, I don't know, it could go back to like the Bronze Age. Well, bronze isn't gonna be able to do this to stone necessarily. So it's like, well, how were they able to do this?
This happens to be the one that I actually really got to view.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some more fascinating stuff. Like they showed these holes that were drilled in them, and technology at the time
like
would
this.
not have lended itself to that ability, and it increased the concept that they were interlocking. From what I gathered, I mean, I really wanted to do more watching, but I mean, I caught on to what they were saying is that these little holes could be for irrigation of water or several different things that they could have done, but way beyond the technology of the time, regardless.
And there's also,
but like you said, the mass-produced thing, and these things are pretty precise.
Even if these are the way I would build these, if these are like volcanic rock, you could just build like a mold. Like
that's the other thing. That's the other thing, Tom.
Wait a minute. Then when the lava comes down, it goes into the mold, then it dries up, and then you've got your perfect formed H.
Well, here's the other thing about that, Tom. I did catch this from the episode, is that the rock that we're looking at right here is only found in this area
of Bolivia.
Of course. I mean,
they're
not going to
world.
import it from like Iceland or something.
Well, no, but that lends to the whole.
I would expect that they would carve the rock like somewhere in the vicinity.
We'll get to that.
But this
it's not always the case.
Found anywhere else.
So
in the world.
That's what you would expect, though.
Well, the other interesting thing about Pumapunku, and again, if you guys are gonna take a deep dive, this is a good one. I mean, if you just on your own.
Before you go off of this, so I didn't watch this episode, but were these H's found together like this, or did they collect them and put them
No, this is as found, and they're everywhere. Okay. They're everywhere, and there's other stones as well. the thing that's interesting is, again, this is anecdotal evidence, it's just theories, but there's a lot of people that have postulated that this site was attacked or blown up, that the scatter, like where these things are and how they have fallen and how they're damaged and things like that almost look like
And where's this location in modern day?
Bolivia by Lake.
Bolivia, okay.
Get ready, Zeus. It's near Lake Titicaca.
Lake Titicaca.
Okay.
So, but anyway,
And they
it's
also
very interesting.
theorized that these could have been tall, like massive
Mhm.
monumental constructs.
Yep, this is from Pumapunku. Again, this is another. Again, they found these details, like these pinholes in these slots. Like no one really knows what these are for.
Those are curious.
Hmm.
The big one I can see. I mean, the big one, maybe you would put the rope through it to pull it, to put it into place. Or you could, be looking through the hole to see the star. You line it up with the stars. The little holes, that's really curious.
I mean, the other thing is, and they, when I look at something like this, I mean, I'm in construction, and I know some good masons.
Do you mean
That's
like Illuminati Masons, or
No, like guys that work with their hands. I'm just saying, this would be a challenging thing to do with tools we have now. I mean, and they
Tell me
say
about the Masons again?
they say that, but I know people that do this kind of work, that work with stone, and this would be difficult now to do. But anyway, so next, this is one of my personal favorites. I just found out about it like a year ago, is Nan Madol. This is in Micronesia, South Pacific, I believe.
Yes.
And, this is there's a lot they don't know about it still. Basically, I'll fast forward here to this picture. This is a drawing of kind of like the layout of it.
There's those little holes. There's those little holes again.
Well, these are basalt logs, basically, that were carved out of a cliff that's on the other side of this island. And they were brought here. I don't have the exact weight on these things, but let's just say they're not light, and they're stacked very high.
Sorry, Mike. I don't
Get
think
off
they
scientific.
carved the logs. I think the logs would form like that. That's why.
In the cliff.
Well, they're not logs. They're
They're stone.
rock.
Are we
Basalt.
talking log like wood?
No.
They're like volcanic rock, I think.
Right.
Gotcha.
Something.
Okay.
And if you
And they
go,
that's why it kind of looks like a log cabin sort of style, but I don't think they carved those. I
You
think
mean
they just
when you
used
say
them.
volcanic rock, you mean like pumice?
this is
Pumice
basalt.
stone?
It's basalt. Yeah. And they found the quarry where they got all this stuff, and it's like what Tom is saying is true. The side of the cliff, it looks fluted, like fluted casing around the door, like you can see where these things came out. But the interesting thing is, one, the locals stay the hell away from this place. They consider it cursed. They have their own bad juju. They have their own stories that it was built by two brothers who came from the sky and levitated these large pieces of basalt from the other side of the island and put them into place. There's also a lot of theories that think that this is a city, part of the lost continent of what's it called, Lemuria, I think, which would connect, Nan Madol, Hawaii. Basically, there was another continent in the South Pacific that's now, underwater. The interesting thing about Nan Madol is the structure actually goes down under the water a few stories. And when people are dating this, they're, the last time that the water level was that low, again, was tens of thousands of years ago. And it's like, so how was this structure built, 60 feet down below the water level? These stacks like kind of keep going. Again, this is another cool one to deep dive into, no pun intended, but there's a lot of cool information on Nan Madol. And again, I'm bringing these up. These are, again, monolithic sites, in the time frame of them, based, if you look at like what our beliefs are as far as where human civilization was, it's just hard for me to believe that that people were using like ropes and logs and stuff and putting this stuff together.
Right.
Maybe they
thing-
were. Maybe they were.
My
I don't know.
argument would be, I mean, if this is aliens coming and building this
Mm-mm,
stuff,
mm-mm.
why does it just look like a pile of rocks?
No,
I mean,
No, yeah, and
they
that's the
should be
thing.
building something out of like steel or some sort
No,
of space
exactly. No,
material.
the idea isn't that the aliens built it. The idea is that we were imparted with some kind of technology that we were, that humans did it,
to
that-
levitate the rocks. Or,
or what have you. I mean, again, there's, you look at like the maglev trains. I mean, that seems like science fiction. I mean, there's all sorts of things that we don't fully understand, but not that aliens built it, but that the humans that did were aided by some technology that we don't have. And again, going back these tens of thousands of years, the idea that, we think that we're king shit at Turd Island, right? But there could have been other smart, sophisticated,
language.
technologically advanced civilizations well before us. I mean, if everything, that show, what was that show called, like where they show like what the earth would look like if we left, like after like 10,000 years, what Manhattan would look like and things along those lines. Who knows what this looked like? Who knows if, maybe this wall had some sort of exterior wooden sheathing on it, that rotted away, after it was abandoned. Who knows? It just seems like pretty involved for people from that time.
So with this area,
Mhm.
is there like a language history, or is this another one of those? I don't know if you're familiar with it, but there's this period in Greek history where it's like a 300-year period where they see little inklings of another language, but otherwise it's a blackout period in history. Is this another one of those?
Well, this is one, I think Nan Madol was discovered by Western scientists in like the early 1800s. Not a lot of record about it before then, and not a lot of writing. I don't think they've ever found any writing on site either. It's definitely a mysterious place. And again, the people that it's a very slightly populated island in the middle of friggin' nowhere in the South Pacific, and the locals avoid it. So there's not a lot known about it. There's just not a lot known about it.
See, those are the periods that fascinate me. The ones where they don't have history.
Mhm.
It's almost like they just scorched earth it.
Yeah.
You know what I
could be
mean?
like
That
religion.
picture is
like
from, that is another angle from that other picture? Or
No,
is that-
this is Sacsayhuaman, which sounds like sexy woman, but Sacsayhuaman.
That looks like Machu Picchu.
Sure does.
right?
Say woman.
Yeah, this is in Cusco, Peru. So yeah, Machu Picchu is in
And they
Peru
call that
as well.
cycloptic building or something? Is that what they call it?
I'm not sure. That's new. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what they call
That's
it.
the technique where they have those the stones where they look like,
Whoops, sorry. Yeah, like you can't. I mean, it's just odd, right? I mean, the way like this here, like how this is fit together.
Right.
And again, I don't have the exact weights on these things, but they're enormous. And this
No.
gets
And they
in,
got to be like a ton at least.
I think a little more than that.
somebody had the
More than
theory
a
that
ton.
No,
those
no,
were-
I mean one of the rocks is probably about a ton.
Yeah,
No,
they're
way
huge.
more than a
Oh,
ton.
even, yeah.
Probably 100, probably a couple hundred ton or 100 tons. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think on the video about this place, they said they were like 80-ton rocks.
Jeez.
And the
I
interesting
don't
thing
understand.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mike. I was gonna.
Yeah.
Why did they always have to use such large rocks? I mean,
so
you can
here's
build a huge, tall building with just small bricks or cinder blocks. And
unless
it could be like 10, 12 stories tall. Why do you have to have a gigantic
Oh,
100-ton rock?
but if
I
you
know-
can do it, then why wouldn't you do it? So maybe they could do it. And how
Because
could
it's
they
so
do it?
much harder.
And
Because it was there.
Did giants build those? Like, people that
Oh,
were
well, yeah,
20
it
foot.
could be.
Oh.
It could have been small to that. Yeah, there you go. Giants built it.
But even if giants, again, even if they had a way of moving it, I mean, you're talking about they carved these. I mean, look how
Yeah.
those things are fit together, man.
Now,
mean,
how would
it's-
giants carve it? with their
Remember-
big
remember you're
giant
talking-
hands.
You're
I
talking
don't
about
think it would work.
giants, people that were 25 feet tall and, monstrously big and were a hybrid of some type. They weren't fully human. They were,
Like a workforce.
Right. They could have
Possibly.
been the ogres. They could
Yeah.
just like carry the rocks.
Yeah, like something out of Lord of the Rings, those
But-
trolls. Those big,
But if you had some technology that made moving these things easy, then you would use large rocks, because why not?
Well,
Well, you know what?
wasn't
I'm not go ahead, I'm sorry.
wasn't the idea that they wanted it to be earthquake proof? I thought I heard that too.
Could be, yeah. I mean, that makes sense. And that,
Well,
that
here's
would
the
certainly
interesting
help.
thing too. What if this is the base of these things? Like, I mean, so
Yeah.
I'm not an architect. You know what I am. But my point being is that if this was the base, this would seem a pretty firm foundation
Yeah.
for something extremely tall.
Glad you
Again.
mentioned that, Zeus.
What's that?
No, it's exactly where I'm going with it. So if you look
Hold
here,
on. Go ahead.
no, again, there's a lot of sites like this. Like this structure here was done later,
Right.
right? And there's a lot of these, throughout the world where the largest, the heaviest stones, the most sophisticated carving techniques are the ones that are further back in time, that are the base, that are part of the foundation. So it's like, again, if people could do this, then why aren't these big stones?
Maybe people got smarter and they
Well,
realized,
maybe
wait
that's
a
like
minute,
a
we could just
wall
use like
inside.
some little rocks and put those, and we don't.
Or
have to have
maybe
these
the
big rocks.
original civilization that did this were wiped out,
All right. And
I
then
liken
people came later and
it to.
added to it.
I mean, we can't look at this, but maybe those smaller stones are like walls inside.
I mean, look at that. It's crazy, man.
It's fascinating. It's really fascinating.
So-
it's kind of mind blowing.
No mortar, right? No mortar. They just like fit.
Yeah, just dry fit.
It's
in there.
almost-
How did they do that?
It's almost like the math was so complicated that even though it looks kind of
Well-
chaotic and disjointed,
One theory
Yeah.
is that that whatever that substance is it was like a clay or almost like a silly putty that they put in place and then it dried.
Ah, that's a good theory.
It almost looks like that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It looks like when you bake muffins in the
Right.
oven and they like
Oh, yeah.
grow
And they
together.
expand.
They put a heat
Right.
to it. They put a
Yeah.
heat source to it, and then it just baked and solidified.
So
It's like an
another
easy bake
one.
oven.
Speaking of foundations, this is a picture from subterranean at the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. Again, dates back. There's a lot more record of this. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Temple Mount, but
Yeah.
right now there is a Muslim mosque. I can't remember what it's called.
The Dome of the Rock monster.
Dome of the Rock
Right.
that's on top. But it's gone back and forth between Jews, Christians, and Muslims throughout the millennia. It used to be a synagogue. It was a temple that was torn down. The Romans sacked it. I mean, this thing has a lot of iterations. Well, down below, and this is part of the Western Wall, like the one where you see like people praying to outside and they stick little notes in the cracks. So this is a part of that exact same wall, except it is not accessible from the outside. You have to be like, on a tour, archaeologist or whatever. It's in a tunnel, but it's part of the same wall. And down low, if you look at this woman, the stone behind her, which I'm outlining here. You see the stone? This isn't even the whole thing. It's so big, it's like not even the whole stone. This thing's about 45 feet long, 13 feet high, and about, I think, 16 feet deep, something along those lines. It's pretty much, it's the largest stone that we know of that we found in any structure on the planet.
Could that have just
like a
been
construct.
part of the bedrock?
Well, that's
And
what they
kind of carved it.
So this-
made it flat.
So this goes down, like below it, like where this lady's hand is, goes down about another 3 to 4 stories on other rocks that are smaller.
Yeah.
So this stone, I had the weight of this thing. They estimate it to be 500 to 600 tons, and there's 3 of them. The largest one that has its own name, they call it the Western Stone. It was not carved in place. They've been able to discern that. It was lifted. And so I started
Whoa.
thinking, like 500, 600 tons, that's, I mean, it's hard to conceptualize how big that is.
How do they know
It's
it
gonna-
was lifted?
That's going to take like 2 or 3 people to lift.
Yeah.
At least. Well, because again, this is, Tom, to your point. So the way this was built, again, this is
We can't replicate it.
Well,
We
what she's
cannot-
standing on is about 3 stories high. It's about 30 feet off the
I
ground.
understand that, but how do they know it was? What did they see that was the indicator that, oh, this must have been moved?
I think it's
this
because
point?
it's up on other rocks, and there's 3 of them. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I don't have. It's just this isn't ancient astronaut stuff. This is like conventional archaeology belief. They don't have an answer in how they did it. I mean, no one. There's theories, but no one really knows. So I started thinking. I was like, okay, 500 to 600 tons. You know, I'm in construction. I'm like, I wonder how much cranes that we have today can lift. You know what I mean? And I was
Not
surprised.
that.
Yeah, no, they can. I was actually surprised. I was expecting it to be like, no, they can't, but they can. So I looked it up, and this
You
is
said they can?
they
They
can.
are able?
Yeah.
Wow.
So this bugger right here is the Taisan crane. It's in China. It's the largest, heaviest lift crane in the world it's ever been made, and it can lift 20,000 tons. So
Wow.
now this is a gantry crane. It can't, which means
Right.
it's in a fixed it's in a fixed location. It's not something that you would use to build a building with. I mean, they use it for shipbuilding. But this is the pinnacle of human technology right now. This is
Right.
the heaviest lift crane in the world, 20,000 tons. So I went
But
down
if you were going to move a large rock, you would erect
Yes.
one of these, and then you would tear it down afterwards.
and then you would have to tear it down, right? And this is the only one of its kind in the world. So number 2 is this guy. It's called the Mammoths. I think it's in Norway or something. And this. I did a lot of deep dive on this stuff, man. It's really interesting. But this is what they call a ring crane. So it can be moved. It can be dismantled and moved, but it runs on this little circular
Right.
train track. So again, it's too big to travel, right? So you could set this thing up. It can reach out. It has a pretty wide area, but you can see. I can't zoom in.
But the counterweight would have to
Whoops.
be,
Yeah, look at the counterweight.
Whoa.
you'd have to have a rock just as big as the other rock you're trying
Well,
to
this
pick up.
thing can lift
Oh, you got
5,000
fulcrum.
tons.
You got like fulcrum stuff. So that weight could actually probably support a weight bigger than it, just based on because it looks like what this thing does is it can reach out. So you can probably do a little more weight with it. I'm guessing. I'm no
What's called-
engineer.
And I've just learned all this stuff in the last week. This is called a ring crane. And again, it's tied for number 2 in the world,
How
with-
much does this one lift?
5,000 tons.
5,000
Jesus.
tons.
And
And how
this-
much was
That's
the
gonna
Dome of
take
the
like
Rock?
4 or 5 people.
Dome of the
600?
Rock was 500 to 600 tons.
Okay.
500 to
So we-
600 tons.
All right.
And
so
the Hulk can lift 100,000 tons, right?
The Hawk
Jack?
can lift 100,000 tons.
Only if he's very angry.
That's right.
So this one is tied with the red one we just saw. Is also a ring crane. It can also lift 5,000 tons. It's called Big Carl. So
Okay.
so those 3
There's a smaller one called Hot Carl.
Hot Carl. Those 3 are the biggest in the world. After the Mammoth and Big Carl, it's a pretty steep drop off to this guy, who can lift 1,200 tons. And this one's mobile.
Really, these aren't for like building buildings. I'm guessing that these are probably more for working on the bottom of shit.
Or bridges, heavy industry. So
Yeah.
the maximum, and again, these are maximums. So the maximum payload for this one is about twice what that rock is at Temple Mount, just to give some perspective. So anyway, so let me click back. That was
Look at
my,
that guy.
that was the slideshow. So again, I just wanted to give some context. I mean, this stuff, if anyone's interested in this stuff, I mean, Ancient Aliens, the shows are definitely cool as a primer to kind of give you a very kind of a veneer of an intro. But there's definitely a lot of information out on this stuff. I mean, everything we've talked about in past episodes, like cargo cults. You know, why do people, you know, there's these people in remote islands that, you know, build things and worship things that they say came from the sky. You know, the idea, the one thing that I really like that kind of hooked me into like thinking about this stuff, you know, if you're looking at our ancient ancestors and kind of giving them respect, right? You take them at their word. Like try looking at this stuff and take what they're saying literally as much as you can. And it's kind of interesting. And the fact that a lot of symbols that they use are used throughout the world. And again, similar architecture. There's structures that are out there, these monolithic structures. I just picked like 5. I mean, there's hundreds of these things, but there's structures that are out there. We have no idea what they were for. I mean, things that look like large flat areas, almost like they could be a landing pad or, you know, whatever people theorize. But the fact that we don't even know what they were, you know.
That one I didn't, sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
I saw that episode and why aliens would need these big landing pads.
I know, I thought the same thing.
All the
That's what I
way
was
across
just
the
thinking about,
galaxy.
Right.
You don't need a big old.
Would you
just
sink in the
land
ground
somewhere.
or something like that? Yeah, I don't know. But the thing
It
Especially
would
that
if
be
you
funny if
can
you go back
levitate
far enough
rocks,
and
if
you
that's-
see that there's these tools where they go.
But if they had the technology to levitate rocks like we're theorizing, then why would you need a landing pad? You can just kind of levitate your ship right there.
I mean, the thing that's fascinating to me is just to think about the fact that I really believe that there have been past human or humanoid civilizations that had advanced technology that were wiped out. I mean, again, if an asteroid hit the planet tomorrow, right, and just wiped us out, the Earth isn't going anywhere, right? Few dozen million years go by, and then they're picking through and they find Zeus's, you know, fossilized skeleton with his tinfoil hat on.
How
Or whatever.
how about you see where they keep finding stuff in the coal? Like they found a buck knife
What?
in coal, and they found like a
Oh,
bell.
they did.
Yeah, they did.
A
When they're
knife.
they found a buck knife.
Are you thinking of
you
the
know,
hammer? Are you thinking of the hammer that they
and
found?
they found
that
the
was-
hammer. Yeah, they found the hammer. Like they find all kinds of stuff deep in
Like
the earth
fossilized inside
from
the
like
coal.
Yeah.
yes. So it's
Like
almost like
tools.
See a picture of
yeah.
this.
So it's
Yeah,
almost
let's
like there
get
was
the
another civilization that was wiped out and buried, and then you know.
Well, it's almost like, so we have this belief that
I'm gonna
human
look this up.
civilization is it's constantly improving and getting better. But I think the more realistic is that it goes up and then crashes and goes
Yes,
up
we
and
keep getting-
crashes.
Yes, we keep getting pushed back into the Stone Age, and then we have to rise again.
And
Well,
we
how
may,
about, you know,
Yeah.
they talk about all these civilizations like Rome and Carthaginian and Persia. Maybe we're thinking too small. Maybe we got to be thinking about whole collections of these, like all of our stuff, Rome, America, you know, China, all these huge civilizations that have prospered and gotten to this point, and we're thinking like way too small. Like maybe there's been several of these collections of civilizations, like our whole, everything we know as far as back as we can go, that's just one of them. I mean, you're talking millions of years. You could fit a few experiments, if you want to call it that, or whole entire worlds of in a sense, in that millions of years that we've been around. Whole religions, whole. You follow where I'm going with this? Like,
well, we may have been a spacefaring beings, before. Our ancestors may have already figured all that out, and we're figuring it out again. I mean, again, there's a lot of hubris. There's a lot, we're very arrogant as a species,
Oh, God, are we?
And the thing about humans that's amazing, I love humans. Humans are amazing, man. I mean, we adapt. We're the most adaptive species on this planet. Like we're everywhere. We're in the Arctic, we're in the desert, we're all over the place. And the thing about humankind is we are always pushing the envelope. We're always like, we got to go to the next thing. It's like one of the things I think that it's something about us as a species that has allowed us to endure as long as we have, because we're always pushing the limits. We're never content. And that's unusual in the natural world. It really is. I mean, you got Musk that's trying to get us to Mars. Like, what if we've been doing this before? Like, suppose we came from Mars. There's this whole, look up the space station, the IS. Well, look up like the ISS and people that stay up there for a year, and their circadian rhythms start reverting to like 24 and a half hours, I think, per day, which is what the solar day on Mars is, when we're off the Earth. I mean,
So like we're like there's some genetic memory, like a DNA memory that
Possibly.
says this is how the body is supposed to work.
Yeah.
Not necessarily that is the best way, but that is what our DNA tells us.
And why are we compelled to go other places? I mean, we manifest destiny, right? Going to the West Coast and going from Europe to the New World, and now we're like going to Mars. I mean, that's bizarre, man. Like, it's hardwired into us. I think we're standing on the shoulders of other civilizations, and we're so arrogant we don't even realize it. I don't think we even realize it. But anyway,
we're gonna have to find a Coke can in the bottom of an oil well. Hey, this is new Coke.
And it could be aliens, it could be us from the future, it could be whatever. But I think I've always been suspicious of people that are like, there's no way it's aliens. It's like, how do you know? I mean, to me, it's I go for like, what's the easiest explanation? And that's a pretty easy explanation.
It's an Occam's razor, man.
Yeah.
I think it's far easier to think two things: that we are the grand experiment of the universe, that somebody's watching us from their own Hubble, or that we, at some point in the future, who knows when, we learn time travel. Be it, my personal belief, the theory I like the most is that it'll be done through thought. So it'll be and it would explain so many things that we concern ourselves with, like possessions and all these other things. I mean, a possession could just be a bad connection from the future. And that's why the way it looks the way it is. There's like a lot of cool, I love this stuff just because it opens up our imaginations to all this crazy cool shit. Whether it's real or not, it's a blast to talk about.
Yeah, it's a fun thought experiment at the very least. At the very least.
It really is in our societal imagination. It really is kind of the Wild West, somewhere where we can really go and you can just make up whatever you want. There is a Spider-Man somewhere. Who knows? There's like everything is just open to the imagination, and that's where we progress, man. Imagination is evolution. Science fiction is the precursor to science fact. We've all heard that, right? I mean, watch Star Trek from 1967, 68, and look at the stuff they do. That's the communicator. It's a wireless communicator that you can talk to somebody across the world from. If you can imagine it, you can make it. You know what I mean?
But imagine, like Mike was showing with the site in Turkey, imagination starts, and throughout human history, it always comes like once you stop being nomadic and you just settle down in one area and you're doing crops, you have a lot more free time. You're not out hunting and gathering every day. So that's when all the art and the crafts and the statues, that all that stuff starts to come around, because people just have free time and they start painting the caves and things like that. So.
And to that point, yeah. So that's where I would say imagination thrives. Obviously, is in with time. You have time, but then you have the people, those nomads that did travel, and they come back, and these people that are questioning things, that are sitting and pondering their navels. You know what I mean? They're like, we got to get out there because there's all this cool stuff. Hey, we figured out that if you drag a stone across the desert long enough, it's flat and you can put it on the other ones. Thus, one of the theories about the pyramids. But then the dude's like, nah, dude, there's these guys in Norway that'll just beat the shit out of you to go out there. So maybe they said,
a lot of work
nah.
to drag a big old stone across the desert to kind of wear it down until it's flat on the bottom.
That's one of the more concrete theories, though, right, Mike? Wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
That's one of the ones they stick to.
I mean, you talk about Occam's razor. That is not Occam's razor.
It is if you have 10,000 slaves to drag them across the desert for you.
But there's been people, there have been like professors that have gotten their grad students and tried to like duplicate this stuff and, like raising an obelisk, of a certain size and things along those lines.
It's always that there are things we do today that people wouldn't know how to replicate unless, like, how do you get the cream inside the pastry?
Twinkie, right?
I mean, yeah, nobody knows how to do that.
It's mind blowing, man.
And once you kind of see how it's done, you're like, oh, okay, now I get it.
That's evidence of aliens, Tom. I'm glad you're on board. So whether we do it next week or another week, I think the next episode in this mini series will be like modern aliens, and I've got a lot on that too. So and that is fun. I mean, this is a little more cerebral. That one's a little more fun, but.
Well, so I guess we're gonna be talking like Tic Tac. Obviously, we're gonna talk about what's that one in Germany? The big one that is like. There was I want to say it was Germany, maybe it was England, Rothenstein or something like that. It was this military base, and there's a lot of cover up about it.
You mean from World War II or recently?
I think it's more recent, like 60s, 70s.
Wow.
There's a lot of cool stuff out there. I love the modern stuff. I'm really excited about that, especially Tic Tacs and the big technological boom that we had right after Area 51 became a thing. Like, I mean, we went from the 50s. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, why don't we save it for next week?
Yeah, don't give it away, man. You gotta
kind of a teaser.
Yeah, we can always stop recording and talk if you want.
Yeah.
But that's all I have. Again,
right,
I hope you guys like it.
Very well done, Mike.
Well, yeah, Mike,
Thanks.
Thank you very much. It was very cool.
Cool.
Awesome.
All right, boys. Well, we have been on for a while. Thank you again, Mike. But I think it's time to wrap things up here.
All right. I'll stop recording. Take care, guys.
Stay on though.
All right, guys.
Bye, Mike. Bye, Zeus.
We'll see you
Bye,
all
Jack.
next week.
See y'all next week.
Bye.